My name is Clara. And this is my story. 30 years ago, my younger sister, Lila, stole everything from me and disappeared. The silence since then had been absolute. Then, one bleak November afternoon, a 19-year-old boy, clearly homeless, walked into my market and claimed to be her son. Lila had vanished with what amounted to $310,000 of my inheritance. The question burned: if she stole so much, why was her child living on the streets? I didn't trust him. His mother had ruined my life, but a part of me felt a flicker of something different about him. At 62, every joint groaned as I stacked canned soup. November in Rochester was slow, the cold wind off the lakes keeping customers away. My store, Clara's Corner, was nothing special: 1,200 square feet of old shelves, a temperamental register, and a small deli counter. But it was mine. I'd opened it at 51 after 15 years of relentless saving, and even now, 11 years later, I constantly feared losing it. The chime above the door cut through the fluorescent hum. A young man stood there, thin and wearing a jacket far too light for the weather, a backpack slung over one shoulder. Homeless, most likely. I returned to the soup, my expression neutral. He drifted to the candy aisle, his hand reaching for a Snickers bar, then pulling back. He looked, but didn't take. He was clearly struggling to build up the courage for something. Finally, he approached the counter. "Excuse me," he said quietly. "Are you Clara Jenkins?" My full name stopped me cold. "Who's asking?" I replied. He swallowed hard. "My name is Elias Vance. Lila Jenkins is my mother." "I think you're my aunt." Lila. The name I hadn't heard since she disappeared with my inheritance nearly 3 decades prior. I immediately denied having family and told him to leave. Trembling, he fumbled out a photograph. I didn't want to look, but I did. It was a picture of 3 women at a picnic table, my mother, Lila, and a 30-year-old me in a yellow shirt. He followed this with a Minnesota ID for Elias Vance, age 19, and a birth certificate showing his mother as Lila Jenkins Vance, and his grandmother as Claire Jenkins, my mother's name. I finally looked at him, really looked, and saw them, the gray-blue eyes and square, cleft chin of the Jenkins family. This was Lila's son. My mind raced. This had to be a con. She'd sent him for money, knowing a homeless kid would be an easier target. I put the photo down. "What do you want from me? Money? A place to stay? What's Lila's angle this time?" Elias blinked, the hope in his eyes shifting to hurt, as he gave me a reply that sounded too simple for the complicated woman his mother was. "I don't want anything. I just wanted to meet you." Was he telling the truth? I don't want anything. I just wanted to meet you. His claim, that he'd spent months looking for family just to say hello, sounded utterly unbelievable after decades of betrayal. I searched his face, but instead of the practiced expressions of a con artist, I saw only exhaustion and a painful flicker of hope. That hope angered me because I'd long ago denied myself that luxury. "Where's Lila?" I demanded. He answered quietly, "I don't know. She kicked me out 2 years ago when I was 17. I haven't seen her since." The shocking news of Lila abandoning her own son tracked perfectly with the woman I knew, but I dismissed it, certain it was the setup for a sob story con. I knew I should have sent him away, should have returned his proof and told him I wanted no part of Lila's games. But I couldn't look away from those eyes, my father's eyes, staring at me from the face of a desperate stranger. I asked how he got the photo. He admitted he stole it from a box in her closet when he was 15, simply because he wanted proof that he came from somewhere. My chest tightened. My sister's son, stealing a family photo because he felt so utterly alone. I slid the picture back across the counter. "I can't help you. I don't know you. Whatever this is, I'm not interested." He picked up the photo, hands shaking, and turned to leave. My mouth opened before I could stop myself. "Wait." He turned back. "You said she kicked you out at 17. Where have you been living?" Elias looked at the floor. Shelters, mostly. Streets when there's no room. A social worker had helped him find me. He was standing there, homeless, asking for nothing but acknowledgement of his existence. I had spent decades building walls to protect myself from the hurt Lila caused. But I couldn't send this kid back out into the cold. "Sit down," I finally managed. He sat, setting his backpack down. I went to the deli counter, grabbing a turkey and Swiss sandwich and pouring a coffee, adding 2 sugars and cream, the way I'd wanted if I hadn't eaten in days. He stared at the food, not moving, until I told him to eat it. He picked it up and ate quickly, trying, and failing, to look like he wasn't starving. I sat across from him. "Tell me about Lila. Where is she?" Elias took another bite of the sandwich and his flat, exhausted voice began to recount a life of constant upheaval, poverty, and betrayal. Was this an elaborate lie, or the real story of the woman who destroyed my life? "We moved a lot when I was a kid. I never went to the same school for more than a year." Elias's voice remained flat as he described Lila's life, a continuous cycle of moving, boyfriends coming and going, and mounting instability. When he was small, Lila would leave him alone, sometimes not returning until the next day, forcing him to subsist on cereal. By the time he was 10, they were living in bad neighborhoods, sometimes in shelters. Lila was drinking more, and her gambling was escalating. He remembered her sitting with lottery tickets, spending $20 to chase a $5 win. This recklessness, this endless chase, sounded exactly like the Lila I knew. She even blamed her son for their lack of money, telling him that having a kid ruined her life. At 14, Elias lied about his age to get a job at a fast food place and gave Lila his paychecks for rent and groceries. She spent the money on slot machines. He knew because he would come home to find casino receipts in the trash or Lila returning drunk, boasting about how close she came to winning big. It was sickeningly predictable. He dropped out of high school his senior year from exhaustion, later getting his GED at a shelter. The end of his time with Lila came when he was 17, when a live-in boyfriend named Greg, who didn't like me, got drunk and hit Elias. When Lila came out, she didn't defend her son. Instead, she told Elias that he shouldn't have started it, agreed with Greg that Elias was old enough to take care of himself, and ordered him to pack his bags and leave that night. He bounced between a friend's couch and shelters in Minneapolis for about a year, constantly trying to find work. It was impossible without an address or clean clothes, and he eventually lost his job and ended up on the streets for 8 months. He spoke of finding places where the cops won't bother you and where it was safe to sleep for a few hours, like it was normal. A year ago, he tried to find Lila but found an eviction notice. She had vanished. He came to Rochester for a good shelter program where a social worker, Andrea Walsh, was helping him find work and checking on him weekly. Andrea was the one who helped him trace his birth certificate names and find the store listed online. I looked at the kid who'd been told his whole life he was a burden, who had survived years of Lila's constant chaos, and I finally recognized the pattern. Lila took everything, gave nothing, blamed everyone else, and abandoned people the moment they stopped being useful. She had done it to me, and now she had done it to her son. "She stole from you, didn't she?" Elias asked quietly, having put the pieces together from my reaction. I confirmed it. She took everything. His next statement, "We're both her victims, aren't we?" forced me to confront my own past and decide if I would tell him the full scope of his mother's betrayal. "We're both her victims, aren't we?" Elias's question hung in the air. Looking at him, seeing my father's eyes, I conceded, "Yeah, I guess we are." For the first time, I saw a genuine release in his face, as if he'd finally found an answer that made sense. The sun had set, and the streetlights were flickering on. "You need to hear mine," I told him, standing up to lock the store and flip the sign to closed, even though it was only 4:30. I explained that our mother had died nearly 3 decades ago when I was 33 and Lila was 28. My mother had left everything, the house, plus $380,000 in life insurance and savings, to be split evenly between us. My half amounted to $310,000. Lila was supposed to co-sign the paperwork to sell the house so we could split the proceeds and the insurance money as the will directed. But she didn't, I stated. Lila forged my signature on the documents, sold the house herself, took all the money, and vanished, moving to Minneapolis. I didn't find out until the bank called, asking why I hadn't picked up my check. There was no check, Lila had already cashed it. I filed a police report, but they deemed it a civil matter. A lawyer confirmed I could sue, but Lila had disappeared, and I didn't have the funds for a long court case. The money and Lila were gone. What happened to you? Elias asked, sitting perfectly still. Everything fell apart. My husband and I had been trying to have a baby for 2 years, and I needed expensive fertility treatments that our insurance wouldn't cover. We had been counting on my inheritance to pay for them. When Lila stole the money, my husband blamed me, I said. He told me I should have been more careful, fighting with me for months. Eventually, he told me that without the possibility of children, he saw no point in staying married, and he left. I was 35, broke, and alone. I moved into a tiny apartment, working double shifts at a grocery store and cleaning jobs on weekends. It took 15 years of non-stop work and saving to scrape together a down payment for Clara's Corner, which I opened at 51. I've worked 70 hours a week ever since just to stay afloat. She stole your whole life, Elias murmured, shaking his head slowly. She stole my chance at having kids. My marriage, my future, $310,000. I met his eyes. So, yeah, when you walked in here today and said her name, every alarm bell went off. Because Lila takes things. That's what she does. Elias looked down at his hands. What do you want me to do? Leave? I knew that was the safe, smart choice. But seeing the man my sister had damaged, I realized she had victimized us both. Could I take a chance on a new beginning? What do you want me to do? Leave? Elias's question hung in the air. The smart, safe choice was to say yes. But looking at the chaos Lila had inflicted on both of us, I saw an opportunity to build something new from the wreckage she'd created. I'll make you an offer, I finally said. Work here, minimum wage. You show up on time, you do the work, you prove you're not like her. Maybe I'll help you get on your feet. Elias's head snapped up. You're serious? I'm serious, I confirmed. But if you steal from me, if you lie to me, if you pull anything that even smells like Lila, you're out. Understood? Understood. He was to start the next day at 5:45 in the morning. Thank you. I swear I won't let you down, he said, standing up fast. We'll see, was all I offered. He left with one of the pre-made sandwiches and a promise to be back before dawn. I watched him walk away and wondered if I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. The next morning, however, at 5:45 exactly, he knocked on the door. For the first 3 weeks, I watched him relentlessly. I counted the register at the end of every shift and checked inventory constantly, waiting for the expected theft, no-show, or con. But Elias came in every single day, 15 minutes early. He worked the register, stocked the shelves, and cleaned the bathroom without being asked. He carried groceries to elderly customers' cars and reorganized shelves after a late delivery. He never complained, never asked for extra money, just worked. After 1 month, I co-signed a lease for a small room for him 2 blocks away. I rationalized it as a practical choice, a stable place to sleep would make him more reliable. But I still didn't fully trust him. 3 months later, he approached me with an idea. What if we offered delivery service for older customers who couldn't walk to the store? When I asked how he'd manage without a car, he suggested using his bike to start small. I let him try, fully expecting failure. Instead, he made flyers on the library computer and put them up at the senior center. Within 2 weeks, we had 10 regular delivery customers, and within 2 months, 15. He loaded groceries, milk, bread, medicine, into his backpack and rode his bike around the neighborhood. Elias also began posting pictures of our deli sandwiches on social media, bringing in younger customers. 6 months into the deal, revenue was up 15%, and the deli was selling out by 2 p.m. When I gave him a small raise, he looked at me like I'd given him a medal and smiled, the first real smile I'd seen. This kid was building things instead of breaking them. Was this a turning point? Elias smiled, the first genuine smile I'd ever seen, and returned to stocking shelves. Something in my chest eased. He wasn't Lila. He showed up instead of disappearing, building things instead of breaking them, and giving instead of taking. After 6 months, I still checked the register every night, but my scrutiny was less obsessive. A year passed. Elias showed up every single day, worked every shift, never stole a dollar, and never did anything to remind me of my sister. On the anniversary of his first day, I closed the store early and bought a small chocolate cake. 1 year. You've been working here a full year, I told him. He stared at the cake, admitting no one had ever celebrated him working somewhere. As we ate, I told him, "You're doing good work. I want you to know that." His eyes welled up. Watching him laugh and get back to work, I felt a terrifying realization: I was starting to care about him. Not just as an employee, but as something else. Love meant risk, opening myself up to loss, but the seed was planted. 3 years passed. Elias was 22, and I was 65. Clara's corner stopped being just mine and became ours. Elias had pushed for breakfast service, and our new egg, cheese, bacon, and avocado wraps sold out by 8:30 a.m. He'd also talked me into catering, starting with sandwich platters for meetings and eventually landing regular lunch orders from local businesses. We hired 2 part-time employees, and I was working 50 hours a week instead of 70. My bank account was healthier than it had been in 20 years, and the store wasn't teetering on the edge of collapse. Elias had flourished. He was healthier and moved through the store with confidence. He knew the regulars' names and what they ordered. When Mrs. Sharma complained about a receipt charge, Elias handled it calmly, found the mistake, and issued a refund, leaving her happy. Watching him, I realized he was no longer an employee, he was my partner. One morning, when a bread supplier arrived late with a partial order, I was ready to explode. But Elias walked out with the driver, listened to him, and returned 10 minutes later with a promise of a discount on future deliveries and an assurance it wouldn't happen again. He was stressed. "I just listened," Elias explained. He built bridges. We began having dinner together at my apartment twice a week, initially discussing business. But one evening, the conversation turned personal, and Elias asked me about my ex-husband. The trust was growing, but Lila's damage still lingered in both of us. Our twice-weekly dinners at my tiny kitchen table grew deeper. After I shared the details of my divorce, Elias revealed his own pain. "My mom used to say she loved me. Then she'd tell me I ruined her life in the same breath. I told him Lila was simply Lila, and nothing was wrong with you. Everything was wrong with her." We talked about Lila rarely, but when we did, it helped, like lancing a wound so it could heal clean. We had both carried her damage for decades, and sharing it made it lighter. Elias later mentioned he'd never had a birthday party, as Lila often forgot or they were too broke for a cake. 1 year, she had promised to celebrate but didn't come home. From then on, I made sure we acknowledged his birthday every year with a simple cake and an hour off. The first time, he cried, trying to hide it. By the 3rd year, he simply smiled, telling me it meant more than I knew. By year 3, the business was thriving enough that we started talking about expansion, a second location in a growing neighborhood. I'd never dared to think past survival, but Elias, taking online courses and reading about profit margins, made it sound possible. "We could do this," he insisted. I agreed to start saving. We put aside between $1,200 and $1,500 a month into a separate bank account, which Elias tracked diligently. It felt real. Our routine solidified. I made the morning coffee, and he handled the opening duties. He locked up at night, and I no longer checked behind him. I trusted him with my keys, my register, my entire business. One night, sitting in my apartment, I realized the truth: I loved him. Not like an employee or nephew, but like a son. The thought terrified me, as love brought the risk of destruction if he left, but it was too late. Year 4 passed, and then year 5 arrived. Elias turned 24, and I turned 67. We had $55,000 saved, had signed a lease for a second space across town, and construction was underway for a spring opening. It was November, 5 years to the day since he had walked into my store. As we took inventory, counting soup cans, Elias laughed. Remember the first day I came in here? I stood in the candy aisle for like 10 minutes trying to work up the courage to talk to you. I remember, I said. I thought you were going to steal something. I was glad I had given him a chance, and he had become family without either of us planning it. He had helped turn my broken-down store and heart into something real. The door chimed. A woman stood in the doorway, moving slowly, gaunt, and desperate. I recognized her instantly. Lila. The sight of Lila, aged badly, gray-skinned, and moving with obvious pain, made my blood run cold. She wore worn, donated clothes and clutched a manila envelope. She looked sick, but I didn't care. Get out, I said. Clara, please. I need to talk to you, Lila pleaded. I repeated, get out. You're not welcome here. Just then, Elias, hearing the commotion, appeared, freezing when he saw his mother, the woman who had abandoned him to the streets. Lila's face crumpled. Elias. Oh God, Elias. I threatened to call the police. Tears running down her face, Lila begged to talk to us. As I pulled out my phone, she cried out the 4 words that stopped us both, I'm dying. Elias gasped. Lila pulled papers from the envelope, her hands shaking. I have medical records, hospital reports, everything. Please just look at them. I don't care if you're dying, I stated, my hand steady on my phone. You stole from me. You destroyed my life, and you threw your own son away like garbage. Leave now. Lila took another step and set the documents on the counter, a hospital letterhead from Rochester Methodist Hospital. I have severe coronary artery disease. 3 blockages. My heart is failing, she confessed. Without a $52,000 triple bypass surgery, the doctors predicted she would die of a massive heart attack within 3 months. She needed $26,000 upfront before they would even schedule the procedure. You're the only family I have left, she cried. You made that choice, I retorted. You chose to steal from me. You chose to abandon your son. You chose every single thing that led you here. Elias picked up the papers. These look real, he said. She forged documents to steal $310,000 from me, I reminded him. You think she can't fake medical records? Lila pleaded with us to call the hospital and verify her doctor's diagnosis. How much do you need? Elias asked quietly. No, I snapped, turning to him. She's my mother, he insisted. And if she's really dying, what does that make us if we say no? I saw the pain and conflict in Elias's face. He was good, unlike his mother, and wanted to believe her. She'll take the money and disappear, I warned. What if she doesn't? Elias shot back. The decision was his, not mine. It's not your decision, Elias's sharp words echoed my own fear. I couldn't control him. I felt like a mother who had just been told she couldn't protect her son. Lila sobbed, promising to pay us back. I picked up her papers and told her to take her sob story and get out. Lila looked at Elias one last time. Please, you know what it's like to be alone and scared. You know what it's like to have nowhere to go. Elias's eyes were wet. She's dying, he said quietly. Maybe, I replied. Or maybe she's running the same con she always runs. Lila, still crying, told us she was staying at the shelter on 3rd Street and left. That night, we argued for hours in my apartment. Elias insisted we had the $55,000 saved for the second store and could delay the expansion to save a life. She threw you on the street at 17. She let you sleep under bridges, I countered. She doesn't deserve our mercy. But what if she's changed? What if she's finally sorry? He asked. I looked him in the eye. Elias, you want a mother, but she's never been that person. Don't let her con you again. For the next week, he brought it up every morning. I spent my evenings researching online, finding stories of people who faked medical diagnoses to prey on family guilt. This is what con artists do, I stressed. Lila has done this her whole life. There is another option. We help her, he persisted. And when she takes the money and disappears, what then? Elias's jaw tightened. You're so sure she's lying? I'm sure she's Lila. That's enough. On the 8th day, Elias came to me before we opened. Okay, we don't give her the money. You're right. I wish things were different. I felt a wave of relief. That afternoon, Lila returned, standing outside and looking through the window. I went out to the parking lot. We're not giving you anything, I told her. Leave Rochester and don't come back. Lila's face crumpled. Please, I'm begging you. The answer was still no. Her voice rose, desperate and shrill. You're murderers, both of you. You'll regret this. Elias stood silently beside me, refusing to contradict my decision. Lila screamed, calling us monsters, then got into an unfamiliar car and drove away. We didn't talk about it, just returned to work. 3 months passed. Winter turned to spring. We finished the new store and set an opening date. I assumed Lila had moved on to a new mark. But one cold February morning, our social worker, Andrea Walsh, walked into the store looking somber. Andrea Walsh, the social worker who had helped Elias 5 years ago, looked solemn. What's wrong? Elias asked. I'm so sorry. I wanted you to hear it from me. She pulled an envelope from her bag. Lila Vance passed away 2 weeks ago. Massive heart attack at a shelter in Minneapolis. Everything she told you was true. The world tilted. Elias's face went white as he took the death certificate. Andrea quietly explained that the hospital tried to get her into emergency surgery, but without the upfront payment, they kept delaying. By the time they admitted her as emergency care, it was too late. Elias moved like a ghost for days. A week later, he was sitting alone at the deli table in the dark when I joined him. We killed her, he said flatly. We had the money, and we let her die. No, I countered, keeping my voice steady. She killed herself. She spent decades making choices, stealing, gambling, abandoning people. She built this ending brick by brick. We chose our future over trusting someone who had proved untrustworthy. That's not murder. That's survival. It feels like I let my mother die, he wept. You didn't let her die. You refused to be destroyed by her one more time. There's a difference. I sat with him, letting him cry for the mother he never had. 2 weeks later, the new store opened, and it was a success, but the joy was muted. We both carried Lila's death. 2 months later, in April, Elias finally spoke about it over cold coffee. I think I understand now, he said. If we'd given her the money and she'd run off, I would have hated myself for being fooled again. Either way, I was going to carry something heavy. We made a choice with the information we had. Her lifetime of reasons not to trust her was not erased by one medical document. I thought about whether she was truly sorry. Maybe. Or maybe she was just scared. We'll never know, I concluded. But Elias, she only showed up when she needed something. That tells you everything. I'm glad I have you, he said. I'm glad I have you, too. We sat together, 2 people who had found each other by accident, building a family out of Lila's wreckage. The next morning, I went to the new store and watched Elias manage it with confidence and kindness. He had become a good man despite Lila because he chose to be different. Lila died alone because that was the life she built. We refused to be destroyed by her one more time. Elias now manages the new store, and we are moving forward with the family we chose to build together. That's my story. Would you have trusted Lila, or was the risk of being fooled again too great?